Welcome again. Peter Little, www.Fightpharmacorruption. It's been a busy day today and a lot of action today on the NHMRC front and the homeopathy industry. So we were talking about the naturopaths yesterday, last night at 9/11, and all hell's broken loose, I'd say, down at the Friends of Science in Medicine, and just waiting for people to come. Don't think I've got anyone. Welcome, we've got one taker here, so that's a pretty good effort. So you're welcome to ask questions as we go along, and also acknowledge that you're here, and if there's any clarification you need, I can follow up after this event. So it's News Flash, Monday the 8th of August, and I was going to show, is anyone actually there? Not showing anybody's there. One person. That's a start. Okay, what we'll do, we're going to flash to what I was talking about last night. And thanks, Grace. It's just you and me at the moment. So I think we might have had a problem getting, or I might have had a problem getting all the invites around for tonight. But anyway, how are you? Got any questions for me, Grace? The day's events today, homeopathy review. Still only showing we've got one person at the moment. So anyway, what I'll do, I'm going to flick to the testimony, Thailand. Oh, that's impressive. I wish I was there, getting any Thai massages. That keeps me alive. Stretching my body, they're pretty amazing. What I'll do here, I'm going to go to the Institute for Science in Medicine, Grace. So we're still just you and me, and it's now we've got a second audience. So let's hope if you're watching this on replay that the numbers build. Thank you, Joanne. I'm going to switch it over to the opposite and see what happens here. Okay, so this is the Institute for Science in Medicine, and one of their founding fellows, which is Paul Offit. Now, he is widely regarded as in the top 2 or 3 most influential in the debate about vaccination, and has a major personal interest in the rotavirus, and actually is a co-author of the vaccine textbook. So I'm hoping he might be able to answer the question that Dr. Cunningham can't. Now, let's just see if this bit works. I'm now going to flash to the testimony, and you can see here, I'll put the link up, hopefully you can find it. It's 28 minutes into really a 2-hour session where about 5 or 6 experts gave evidence, and we'll just start the ball rolling and
thank you.
Have a listen to what's happening with naturopaths in the US.
Dr. Offit, I want to turn to you now. 3 years ago, when naturopathic doctors finally got the legislative authority to practice medicine in Colorado, their practice was limited with respect to
Can everybody
children.
hear that?
The state chapter of the AAP fought strongly up until the last days of the session to keep NDs from treating any children, but finally compromised to no treatment for infants under 2 and treatment of children aged 2 to 8 only if there is also a pediatrician or family doc involved. They also had to, in the end, they also had to recommend to all parents who bring in children that those children be vaccinated according to the accepted childhood schedule. The NDs chafed under these provisions for a year, complaining that the practice restrictions over children deny them, the NDs, their right to practice fully as primary care providers, PCPs, which they claim is what they are. After that first year of regulation, they successfully lobbied the legislature to change the statute. Now NDs can diagnose and treat children of any age and only have to have a collaborative, and I put that in quotes, arrangement with a pediatrician or family physician. 3 related questions to you, Dr. Offit. Do you see naturopathic doctors as reliable PCPs, especially with respect to children? were the original pediatric practice restrictions a legitimate compromise that protected children? And in particular, what do you see happening with requiring NDs to recommend the childhood vaccination schedule? Over to you, sir.
Here's what I would say. So I'm a pediatrician, trained as a pediatrician, and which meant that I had a 3-year residency training program at the Children's Hospital of Pittsburgh, which was a large both primary and tertiary care center that served that sort of tri-state area, but at the corner of western Pennsylvania, so it's Pennsylvania, Ohio, and West Virginia. Not of sick children, and frankly, the purpose of your residency training, and it's an intense one. You're on every, roughly 80 hours a week. What the purpose of that training is to enable you to distinguish who's sick and who's not. And it may sound simple on its face, but it's not. So, for example, in a winter month, you would also often see children who had winter stomach viruses, who would have fever and vomiting and diarrhea. Well, fever, vomiting, and diarrhea also can be the initial symptoms of meningitis. So what your residency taught you, what my residency taught me, was how to distinguish children who were sick with what were sort of typical viral infections from children who were sick with what could be overwhelming bacterial infections. The stories that you tell in Vancouver or in Australia are the stories of people who aren't recognizing what are significant bacterial illnesses. Not recognizing them is that they weren't trained to recognize them. And I think although certainly people who are classically trained as MDs or classically trained in pediatric residency programs also don't always get it right, they still have a much better chance of getting it right if they have that kind of extensive training. You can't just throw your hat in the ring and say you're going to take care of children who can have serious and occasionally fatal infections without having been trained significantly in a manner that enables you to do that. Which I guess addresses at least the first and to some extent your second question. The third question you asked, so if I don't answer this fully, please don't hesitate to follow up with more questions. Regarding vaccines, typically naturopaths or people who would call themselves practitioners of allopathic medicine, historically chiropractors, have acupuncturists, have traditionally set themselves up apart from
acupuncturists and chiros and naturopaths.
Not recommending vaccines.
Not recommending vaccines.
Programs. And so if you choose to delay or withhold or separate or space out vaccines, or worse, to not recommend them, then what you see happening is what's happening now. When you have, for example, an outbreak that starts at a Disney theme park in Southern California of measles that then spreads to 25 states and involves 189 people, that's really the blip on the iceberg of what can happen if more and more naturopaths choose to practice medicine and knowing that they're not likely to recommend
blaming measles outbreaks on naturopaths.
I'll tell you, I live in Philadelphia. I lived in Philadelphia in 1991 during one of the worst measles epidemics, frankly, in the vaccine era. It involved 2 fundamentalist churches who chose not to vaccinate their children. We had in our city over a several-month period in 1991.
This is the man that's driving the banning of natural practice in Australia. This is absolutely linked to the state-based legislation about to get involved in your lives.
That medical care has to offer, and I worry that naturopaths would not necessarily recommend that. The other issue, it's not directly related to the 3 questions you asked, but worries me, is that a lot of these quote-unquote natural products, which is to say products that one gets either whether they're vitamins or megavitamins or minerals or these North American botanical agents. This is not a regulated industry, and you don't have to look very far to find a series of publications which show you that these products often aren't what they're claimed to be. At our hospital, Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, a couple years ago, we basically banned dietary supplement use in our hospital. You have to sign a waiver if you're going to use it. The reason is that we
banning
know what
vitamins and minerals in hospitals.
The Joint Commission of Hospital Accreditation asked us to treat these products, these vitamins and minerals and botanicals. Fair enough, they are drugs. They can have a pharmacological or physiological effect. So what we would do then is, for example, someone would bring in...
I'll let you listen to the rest of it, but I just wanted to capture just the essence of all of this. There's a lot of debate about the segregation between vaccination and medical treatments, and they're two different issues. This whole war, this turf war, is absolutely about vaccination. So it's got nothing to do with being pro-vax or anti-vax. It is about absolute learn the risks. That's what it's about, Brandy Vaughan. So it doesn't matter whether you're vaccinating people or not. Learn the risk, because this man is driving the agenda through the US equivalent of the Friends of Science in Medicine. I've given you the links to the site. There's 6 or 7 other people that gave evidence there, and they don't have a high degree of interest in naturopaths, as you can hear. In fact, banning vitamins and mineral supplements or whatever in hospitals. So I wonder when they'll look at the food they serve. So that's one issue of what's driving the attention in Australia. There's a direct link earlier on, around about the 17-minute mark, in relation to an incident in Australia. So they're going to try and milk any single incident they can find, just like they're doing with my hyperbaric friend, just like they're doing with the chiropractor, with the child, just like they've started with the Chinese medicine. Please do you understand that this is an attempt to exclude all families from going to anyone in the health system unless it's a GP or a paediatrician or a vaccinator. They're trying to eliminate all possibility of getting trained in anything else except minus 9 months in vaccination, or minus 3 or minus 6 months whenever they're doing the pregnant women, day 1 on the baby, 8 vaccinations, month 2, etc. We all know the story. And then adult registration coming in October. And in the US, Brandy says it's going to be possibly linked to passports, driver's licenses, health insurance. Everyone out there, all the parents, you're going to have a whole wall of drugs. Let me grab this piece of paper. I wasn't going to show you this, but now that we're hopeful that Brandy will come out in November, you want to download off learntherisk.org. It won't come up very well this way. I'll do it this way and see if you can just. Interesting. This is back in 1962, and I've got my form. That's what I've had: polio, smallpox, and DTP. Then my son's in 1986 had the ones you can see there, and now this is the current schedule. Like that's 72. So it's gone 24 when I had kids, 5 when my grandparents had kids. So 5 in 1962, 24 in 1983. This is the US, and we're not far behind. And 72 in 2016, with 300 under development. And look at the list. Look at the list. I wish she'd do it on one page, you know. So that's now, that's my kids, and that's me. And my dad says at 95 they used to have smallpox parties, chicken pox or whatever, measles, rubella, and the minute anyone got it when they were young, and he's 95 and he's on 0 drugs, so it didn't affect his immune system. So it's learning the risks. It's got nothing to do with anti-vax, nothing to do with pro-vax. It's learn the risks, and that's why I'm so excited the way Brandy Vaughan, the biggest whistleblower ever, cost Vioxx, with a Vioxx drug, it cost Merck $6 billion when she uncovered that pharmaceutical drug. So she's made a name not with vaccines, she made a name with a pharmaceutical drug, which is regulated totally differently to vaccines, and actually is supposed to have proper science. Now, big breakthrough today, with the great news of the CMA backing the Homeopathy Association to put a torch under the NHMRC's review that was put out last April, I believe, 2015 April, and that's gone to the Health Ombudsman in New South Wales. So that's going to be a very interesting issue. I've put that up on the site. I won't go into any more detail. There's something like at least 7 friends of science in medicine implicated. Actually more. I think it was 7 who didn't declare a conflict of interest. So we're going to have a lot of fun with those friends. We've had a lot of fun with Dr. Cunningham, who's gone very quiet on trying to find the evidence base for the MMR vaccine. So I hope maybe Dr. Offit might actually be able to find it. There's been a bit of confusion at what it is. So let me just... Here, this is the handbook, Australian Immunisation Handbook, 10th edition, right? Updated in 2014. I think that's the latest. If you go to page 296, right? I'll get better at doing this, but there's where is it? There it is. 296. It's a section on mumps, and I want you to go 4.11.4. There'll be a big prize if you can find this. You go down to the second paragraph. Clinical trials of MMR vaccine. Now, we're not indicate 95% mumps seroconversion after a single dose and up to 100% after a second dose. Reference number 4. See the little 4? Now, in the handbook, they don't want you to know what's going on, so it's blank, right? They could have put the references here. There's about 8 blank pages. They don't want you to work this out. But I've worked it out. Let me come back. There'll be some technical gadget that can do this better than what I just did. But anyway, we're having a crack, and I apologise if you don't like my Channel 7 photographer. When you go to the government site, it's a different reference number, and I apologise. I'll put it up on the on my Facebook page what the reference is. Now, I have worked my butt off for 3 months to try and find that science trial, right? This has got nothing to do with the 20-year debate about whether the just about everybody getting autism now in the next couple of years, next 10 years or 20 years, whether it's 1 in 2 or something. Got nothing to do whether these vaccinations are driving the autism. I'm just trying to find the efficacy. Let's just start with the efficacy. You'd think that would be fairly obvious if it's the most contentious vaccine. And here is the answer. I have tracked down, and it's in this black folder, right? And let me tell you who wrote the book, or co-wrote it. You guessed it. It's a textbook. It's not a scientific trial. It's a textbook, right? Dr. Offit, Paul Offit, is a co-author. So he should be able to find the efficacy that I just said in that handbook. No one at the NHMRC can help me. I've got a really weird reply I'll tell you about there. So somewhere in this chapter here, you might be able to find it. But anyway, see if you can find it, and you will be my business partner in whistleblowersunite.com, and I promise you'll get a lot of shares in that new entity, which will encourage a lot of litigation, tracking down corruption. So first in, best dressed. Dr. Cunningham's given up. I've given it to lots of doctors. I've given it to Associate Professor Helen Marshall, another member of science that thinks all the vaccinations are good for pregnant women, even though the Cochrane wasn't supportive of influenza. Now, we've also got some late-breaking news with, so we've talked about the Friends of Science, we've talked about the NHMRC and the homeopathy. I'm still waiting to find out about a lot of conflicts of interest on panels with the NHMRC, so keep waiting for that one. I'm still waiting to find out from the Victorian Minister. You might recall that we started this group worried about all this state-based legislation. Now, one of the ways to get this fixed is what we're doing every night and every day with everything we're doing. It's all interrelated. But if you go back to it's actually July 2015, the Victorian government had a modernising Victoria's health complaints legislation. They sought submissions, and unfortunately they haven't published who's done them. Now, I had a meeting last week with the head bureaucrat. I've asked again that they have until Thursday to publish that list. So 50 people put in submissions on the Victorian State-Based Complaints Act, and none of them have been disclosed who they were. Now, in the context of the NHMRC not disclosing up to 10 Friends of Science in Medicine have stitched you up on 2 separate committees, and we'll probably find more. Why the Victorian government, with Minister Hennessy, wanting to have my hyperbaric man in the ACCC pretty soon, which will be the 12th regulatory attempt. So we've had success with 11 in a row, so we'll see how we go with the 12th. Why do they want to keep it secret for you Victorian natural practitioners who gave all those submissions and tightened up your act a little bit tighter than the other states? So that has till Thursday to break, so I'm hoping to get some late breaking news Thursday. Next on my little list was a crystal ball one. If you look on the website, launch of www.whistleblowers.com, very, very close, and it will be a key sponsor of an anti-corruption seminar in November. I've got another big name to announce soon. It'll come out to Australia. Crystal Ball 2 is a template that you can use, either your patients, mothers, or fathers, or could be adult patients as well. A template for valid, informed consent questions you can ask. I've just about got it finalised, so that'll be on the agenda very soon, and that'll be able to be given to a doctor to get the information back. Let me make this very clear. In the handbook, which doesn't show up the opposite way, doesn't it, I think, when you see it. In the handbook, it's very clear that there's 2 concepts. The doctor or the nurse must wait till the parent gives valid informed consent. And the parent can't give that until the parent or the patient receives adequate informed consent. So the questions that many people have been involved in creating this template, there's been parents, there's been other lawyer friends of mine, and other people in different areas right across the board. These are basic questions on informed consent, and I'm finding they are not being answered by very senior people. So let's wait for that one. The next one I'm working on is the adverse event form, because doctors are not reporting adverse events, particularly in relation to vaccination. So there's a template that is coming on that one, and then parents should, legally, they're required under the TGA to report side effects from any medical intervention. Finally, there's the crystal ball number 4 I've listed, and that's at the moment, it's a 7-page document, which is here, and that's called an approved complaint form starting in New South Wales, because put your hand up if you're from New South Wales listening. You're supposed to have a complaint form to patients that is approved by the Director General. Now, despite the code being amended in 2012, they've never approved a complaint form. So I've drafted this one that is not only satisfies just from the complaint issue, it also addresses your very, very strict requirements, mandatory requirements, to consult with the patient's doctors and other practicing health professionals, and to find out what pharmaceutical drugs or any other indications are on there so that you can treat the patient. So this is a very important document. I'll be going to New South Wales, hopefully, if we can get some funds in the kitty. The GoFundMe would be, there's been not a lot coming in for a couple of weeks, but that's okay. I'm not spending much on French Island. And that next trip will be to be the 22nd of August in Sydney, where Arona is having yet another crack at luring you into the ARPA net. Well, let's just see who the ARPA net is. I can guarantee that Arona wants you to be lured into this net. And if you want to get into bed with the ARPA and think you're going to be practicing, or go and talk to all the chiros that are paranoid and had something like over 2,000 complaints from the little puppet organisation of Dr. Offit, the Friends of Science in Medicine. So, 22nd of August is going to be very important for every New South Wales practitioner to be there. There's going to be a panel of experts. I'm sure, I don't think I've got an invite yet, but maybe they might want to contribute, and John Mortal and I are having good dialogue behind the scenes. the crystal ball number 5 is, which friend of science do you think we should report first? I mean, should it be President John Dwyer, that went very quiet on me after trying to blog me seriously on his site and ignoring Cochrane collaborations for rubella, which is very false and misleading, John, and he's the president? Or should it be Dr. Cunningham, that's called me an obnoxious pea and a liar lately, and pulling my own Facebook events and challenging Tasha David's parentage under his nighttime sojourn that he's very late on social media under JC Big Ears? That's Dr. John Cunningham, who's also the main spokesman for, let me see who in Australia is the main for Dr. Offit. It's Dr. Cunningham. Yes, it is. I deny it, but there's one organisation that's attacking any single person, whether it's me or any of you, and I know you're all scared to come on my website because you know the friends are going to be looking at who you are, and they're going to look at their websites and have a lot of fun at night, putting their little aliases on and having a crack at you. Well, I've just done 2 weeks with them, and I've had 6 friends on my site at least. I've looked them up and they're all there. I'm not scared, so I'll be getting an early night tonight, unless John wants to have another crack. But I think after today's homeopathy review and the fact that up to 10 friends of science has secretly stitched up the natural therapies, sitting on all these little committees, won't it be fun to find out the peer review committees, which I've asked, that gave the money to 100 friends of science members, right? 100 of them we've tracked down, got grants. Some of them got 15 million. Guess what? They can only get it off a peer group of around 15 people, which is never disclosed. It's like the NHMRC review on naturopathy. It's like the NHMRC review on natural therapies. They were disclosed, but let's just find out how many links there are on the second review. The one that came out today was just commenting on the homeopathy review. I've got some big revelations for who sat on that committee, right? We know the names, but let's just, I don't know whether it'll be tomorrow night or not. I mean, we've got a lot of work to do, but, it's a farce, the NHMRC. It's having a review after 15 years. They never account for the money. You don't have to say where it went. It could be smashed by Cochrane, all the science you do, and no one's accountable. And all you need to get another grant is make sure you've got your mates around the table. Well, we all know what that means. So I've got an action step for you. Who would like to check the website of one friend of science in medicine? So I'll put up the list shortly, and I'd like you to report after you pour over a friend of science website. I'll give you some names, some suggestions, perhaps the ones that have been on the committees ruling against your evidence, lack of clinical evidence. Let's target them. Now their names are out today. Let's have a look at them, and you would then judge whether they're false or misleading statements have been made, or whether they're biased, or whether they're getting on social media late at night and intimidating natural practitioners and advocates like me. So we shut up and let this absolute brilliant vaccination plan from cradle to grave, and now fetus to grave, take place with the adult register coming in October in Australia. So I've got a big plan myself. My homework is to create the Australian vaccination register for politicians and their spouses and their children. So before we have to be doing our adult vaccination, let's get the politicians, right, and find out what they're on, okay, and their spouse and their children. So this is one big plot, and we're all uncovering it, and I appreciate you listening and sharing this with your colleagues, because the testimony, you want to listen to the full 2 hours, right? I've given you about 5 minutes of Offit. There's another 1 hour and 55, babies, I tell you. And this is to nail naturopathy, right? Okay. Lucky one associate. So there's 2 associations got off their bum and did this massive work, right, for one homeopathy profession. What about the other 16 associations? Which of you want to come with me and help address the same issues in the very big document, the 17 natural therapy document, right? Nothing's been done on that one, okay? So we've got a state-based complaints act. There's a race against time. It's going to start 1 February. It's all interrelated, Amanda. I need you on board. Amanda's done a terrific job for me in the background. Thank you, Amanda. And it's a very, very critical time right now. We've got an NHMRC review. We've got the Arona registration on. We've got this major nephropathy thing in the US. And we've got a State Complaints Act coming in Victoria. So once that's all in place, the Friends would have been going nuts. We have a huge chance of dismantling them. And you think if you've got $15 million from the NHMRC and there's a bit of a smell building about the Friends of Science in Medicine, do you think you'd want to stay on it? And I've warned my oldest mate and the best entrepreneur I've ever seen in my career, and I've probably bankrolled, I wouldn't know how many, 300 or 400, maybe more entrepreneurs. The number one entrepreneur is our chief scientist, and I pray, Alan Finkel, you have a close look at this and get off the Friends of Science in Medicine, because I don't think Alan realises any of this. I can't imagine he would. One of the smartest guys I've ever met, and just a brilliant Australian. So I think the challenge now is for all of you to start looking at the Friends of Science, looking at the Cochranes related to their area of expertise. Very easy to read Cochranes, just read one. Just ask your sister, your brother, your mother, you get their little drugs out and just bang one into cochrane.org and look for a systematic review and just look at the first 2 pages. That's all you need to look at. You only need to look at 2 pages. It's a consumer, simple document, and you get to the end and you get an author's conclusion, and I'll show you a conclusion. So I want you to start looking at Cochrane, please. Please. Here's one. Author's conclusion: influenza vaccines have a very modest effect in reducing influenza symptoms and working days lost in the general population, including pregnant women, right? So you only need to do that. There's 9,600 Cochranes. If I could just get each natural practitioner and their patients, we can do the 9,600, put it on a new website I'm just going to set up called One Giant Cock-Up, COCH, and we'll just put the conclusion. So we'll have one drug, one conclusion, right? And then we'll make them accountable for their own medicine. Instead of Dr. Offit saying, there's no evidence supporting nephropathy. Nephropathy helped an incredible depression I was in 2004, and nephropathy rescued my start to a new sporting career at 59 when I had a arrhythmia attack. A very good product, I'm not allowed to say, but it was alkaline mineral salts, recommended by a gun naturopath who's been under the attack constantly. Brilliant. And that avoids the need for a pacemaker. So, nephropathy has made an enormous impact on my life and the way that I'm able to manage this process with all of you. And it's a disgrace that it's being attacked the way it is by people that have very little evidence in their backyard. And never, John Cunningham, discuss the evidence. He will never, ever discuss it. I call it an ICI, right? It's... We'll come to that another one. I think I've done enough tonight. Love to you all, and listen to the 2 hours of testimony, and we'll tune in tomorrow night at 9:11. There'll be another big breaking story tomorrow night. We've had the homeopathy NHMRC. I'm sweating on that Victorian complaints one and getting the names of the 50 people that submitted on it. Boy, that's going to be interesting. They've censored it. There's some good names in there, and they've said some nasty things they don't want us to read, haven't they? Anyway, Jill Hennessy, Minister Hennessy, and got a good number 1, Pauline Ireland. Thank you, Pauline, and look forward to getting that in the next day or so. Signing off from www.Fightpharmacorruption. Graham Little, knee Peter Pope. Bye. Watch the Olympics. How are we going? Aussie, Aussie, Aussie! Oi! There's the Aussies back in Manchester. Boy, did we get a few gold medals there.